Quick mic check.
Yes.
Yes.
Hello, welcome to the Whiskey Lodgecast. I am your host, DemiTastes, and I'm joined today, as usual, by Spooky Chicken and Duckphill Platypus. Um, sorry for the tremendous delay getting stream started today, but you'll see it was well worth it because we have everybody with a camera today. Hooray!
Finally, at last.
It's been a
Finally.
while.
It's been a little bit. I don't know when it was last that we all had everyone on screen.
And we have a solid audience right now, despite the fact that we delayed quite a long time. And yeah, thank you all for your patience. Um,
Yes.
I
Thank you so much.
I should learn that I should absolutely never be on the road between 3 and 6 p.m. because I just can't get anywhere I need to go, when I think. And also, like, I made a horrible mistake of going to an intersection that is right adjacent to another intersection where the traffic signals are not, like, lined up in a useful way. So at rush hour, you get about 2 cars in per light. And
Oh, that
that's
is
where
the
I was stuck.
worst.
I was stuck there for 20 minutes. And then
That's awful.
the rest of the story is not interesting. Um, but yeah, here I am. And during that hour, while I was sitting in the car, I was having my local coffee shop. I dropped by and I got these, which I am told this one's fun. You won't be able to see it very easily. This is called Mate Mateos, and this is a natural processed bean, which is one of my favorite types. And the reason I went for this is because a couple weeks ago, the barista told me this is one of their best coffees for pour over, and I wanted to get this as a gift. And also, it has gin botanical notes to it.
Interesting.
Interesting.
I have not made
Very
this.
interesting.
Yeah, I was super intrigued by it. I haven't made it as a pour over for myself because, and I've only had it twice now as a latte, and it makes a really nice latte. It has a very interesting herbalness to it. So I'll be able to like give more details about this one in a couple weeks when I'm back from vacation and I've had a chance to try it and all. But this one is going as a gift to my friends. So yeah.
So, what is it that you're drinking right there, then, Doug?
Well, I finished the coffee. And
No.
that was from the coffee shop was this, but in a latte. that they made. So I took home a bag of the same beans. Anyway, what are you
Fair
drinking,
enough.
Ian?
I want to paint you a picture.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
I want you to imagine you're out on a porch in the sunset in the summer down south. You're drinking a nice lemonade, and suddenly a man comes up behind you and he beats you over the head with a bag of coals.
Wait, what?
I made one of the worst cocktails that I've ever had in my life. It was equal parts Aperol, lime juice, and a honey liqueur, all of which tasted excellent together. And then, just to be fun, I popped in Tire Fire cask strength whiskey from down in Georgia. And this was a mistake. This stuff is unabashedly smoky. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but it just did like it. The back end of it was completely overpowered with smoke and burning smells. It was wild.
All right, so just for the audience, you've done a good job of introducing our topic today. So what somewhere around 4 o'clock today, I prompted y'all, hey, do you know any good cocktail specs for American Single Malt Whiskey? And I unfortunately didn't have a chance to even try to look into any of those because I was on the road up until just before we went live. But that Tire Fire, that's an American Single Malt, right?
Oh yeah, very much so.
And it's smoky.
Got a bit of an
I
interesting
imagine.
history to it.
It's certainly Tire Fire certainly sounds like peat.
The whole idea I gather from it was that apparently the head distiller at which distillery is this one? ASW Distillery down in Atlanta does not like heavily peated malt whiskey, so they made him make one. So far as I gather, and he thinks that they all taste like tire fires, and so that's what he named it. And I'm going to be honest, it's a very apt name. It's a fascinating whiskey.
So was the goal here try to get the guy to make something that he likes better in the category, or just do it to torture him?
Do it to torture him, I gather. That's what it tastes like.
Interesting.
Unfortunate.
Is that your official review?
I'll give my official review when I taste it on stream in a minute.
Okay, cool. Phill, what are you having right now?
Well, I've got a little bit left in my can of Coke because long day of work requires caffeine.
Yes.
But I was thinking about pouring myself a little bit of Stranahan's or some Courage and Conviction from the Virginia Distillery Company. And I think I'm leaning towards the Courage and Conviction.
So I would also lean towards that one because I was just reminded when I was doing my homework prior to this episode or this stream. We'll see if it becomes an episode of anything. Prior to this stream, I was looking at the American Single Malt Commission's website and remembered that the Virginia Distillery Company is one of the founding members of the ASMWC.
Genji, that's an excellent thing to have. Eat chocolate ice cream instead of alcohol. Beautiful.
Ooh.
Yeah, I've
If I
also...
wasn't lactose intolerant.
My wife chooses to suffer through lactose intolerance because dairy is sometimes worth it.
I often do as well. I actually went to Dairy Queen for lunch with my boss today.
Oh. None of the Dairy Queens around here serve like food. They only serve ice cream, which is a shame because I actually kind of like their burgers.
Have you ever had the fried cheese curds?
Yes.
From Dairy Queen? No, I don't think so.
It's a fun snack to have. And yeah, welcome to the chat as usual, Genji. Thank you. Yeah, I also have been I've needed some comfort food this week, and so I've also been enjoying ice cream on a regular basis, which is not good for my waistline. I had some vague thought that I would lose a little bit of weight before going on vacation, but I figure I'll be walking around enough to probably make up for it.
Fair enough.
I actually drove by a Dairy Queen, and if I hadn't been running so late already, I would have stopped in because same logic. I've just been really craving ice cream lately.
I grabbed oh yeah, go on, Phill.
I was gonna say there's something about the Dairy Queen ice cream too, like especially the blizzards. Like I can't explain it, but there's something about them that I particularly enjoy. Despite it not being particularly good.
In the
Went to a
interest of
Dairy Queen once
time,
as a child.
Yes.
in the
Sorry.
interest of time, let's get right
Yeah,
into our topic of the day. Um,
indeed.
and ironically, I think the streams we do where we come in less prepared end up being more entertaining. So I have high hopes for the next hour. Um, Today we are talking about American Single Malt Whiskey, and I myself have started by pouring something which, for the better part of a month in December, the Westward Pinot cask was my daily drinker. And this is a highly significant statement on my part because there is almost nothing that I've ever wanted to make into a daily drinker in the sense of, despite my entire collection, I'm going to be having this night after night after night because it is just so drinkable.
Let's see, Phil. What are you having first?
I've
We'll
got
get to tasting notes and things like that in just a moment. But
I've got a pour of the Virginia Distillery Company Courage and Conviction. This is the Nancy Fraley flagship batch, which is sort of, I believe, if I remember correctly, based on the website, a blend of their cuvee cask, their sherry cask, and their bourbon cask. I could be wrong, but it's sort of their standard, like not as specialized as the sherry cask, the cuvee cask, or the bourbon cask. And this is from the batch dedicated to Nancy Fraley.
we'll talk about that in a second. Actually,
Yes.
I am starting off with. I hate to be too much of a shill. I'm starting off with the Del Bach Dorado right here. Mesquite smoked whiskey from down out here. I work there. It's a whole thing. We'll go in order, I suppose. Doug, tell me about this Pinot Noir cask. I'm really interested in that it was your daily drinker for so long.
Yeah, so there's a couple reasons for that. Disclosure, if I recall correctly, this was one of the distillery samples I received from Westward. Um, I had COVID in around Thanksgiving time and lost my sense of smell for about 10 days and
Terrifying.
kind of had to like retrain my palate on tasting notes after that too. So even after I kind of had the sense that I had my full sense of taste back, it took me a while to be able to put names to the flavors again. Sort of had to like
Remind me, when was that again?
Thanksgiving in last year. So it's been a
Was that
while.
about when I actually was that about when I popped onto the Discord actually?
Might have been, yeah. You joined in
Yeah, I think
October,
so. Yeah.
which is I think and I remember that because your name is Spooky Chicken, so I thought that it was I thought it was like a Halloween month reference, but
Apropos,
you
yeah.
never changed your name. Yeah.
Sometimes I change it to Merry Chicken around the Christmas time, but
Ah, yes. Yeah, I remember that. I also remember that. And so I thought it was you're just going you're
yeah.
rolling with the holiday themes, right? What's it going to be in January? But yeah,
New chicken usually.
new chicken. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, after COVID, I just kind of wanted like I wanted to like sort of work my way back into tasting notes, and I kept basically saying like I'm just gonna taste the same thing until I can taste it, like until I can really. So actually, the first thing I was able to taste properly was 10 days after I had lost my sense of smell, and I was better like a week before that. Like other than my sense of smell, I was like all the way better. Um, so about 10 days after I lost my sense of smell, I opened up a blind sample and identified, meaning I didn't know what was in the sample. It was not written on the bottle because it was friends giving me a blind sample for Advent. Um, and it turned out to be a McCarthy's single cask I had never had before. And I correctly identified it as a McCarthy's Oregon single malt single cask that I had, or not necessarily single cask, but an expression of McCarthy's that I had never tried before, which meant that it could only be a single cask, right? So I essentially nailed like it's my first attempt at whiskey, which was like a few days after I'd been able to taste like honey and cinnamon again, because I'd, honey, cinnamon, lemon juice, the sort of like cleansing comfort drink, right? That was what I was doing. So a couple days after I was able to taste things, I was like, okay, it's time for me to try tasting a whiskey. And I blind identified my favorite brand. So that sample, that bottle, I ended up with a full bottle of it, is always going to sit with me as this is the thing that let me know that my palate was back. But even then, just because of fatigue, I actually had long fatigue for a few weeks after that. So like just because of um, just a general malaise, I didn't want to be like getting back to the daily review a new thing. So I basically just picked a bottle, and I was like, this 45% alcohol with like a nice distinctive flavor profile and the right balance of bitter and sweet, and it has this sort of beery quality to it. And it was just a really nice thing to sit with while I was playing video games or watching TV, and it just kind of became like a nice comfort drink. And I just said, you know what, that's fine. I'm just gonna sit and enjoy this for however many weeks it was, like 2 or 3 weeks, and that was the only thing I was drinking. Um, and you can see the kind of not like the very small amount of damage I do to a bottle, even when I'm focusing on it, because I pour a half ounce at a time. So this is 3 weeks of like 4 days a week drinking half an ounce at a time, and the bottle's just about half empty. And then I kind of, after that period of time, I pretty much left this bottle alone for the better part of this year.
Doug is friends with his liver.
I am. I do take that very seriously.
Oh, sure, totally. So, Phil, tell me a little bit about what it is that you're drinking right there.
So,
In turn,
Courage and Conviction is sort of you may be more familiar with the Virginia Distillery Company for what is now called VHW, but was for a while called Virginia Highland Whiskey, which is a blend of malt whiskey from Scotland and malt whiskey from the Highland area of Virginia, blended together and finished in port casks. Courage and Conviction is absolutely 100% their own spirit. And it is sort of a part of their branding is that they dedicate batches to courageous individuals. In this case, Nancy the Nose Fraley, who is one of the luminaries of whiskey blendings. A lot of brands when they're looking to establish a profile or really improve their blending, they turn to Nancy Fraley, and she produces some of the best regarded blends in American whiskey.
is she the one that has her nose insured for like $1 million or something like that?
I don't think so.
Okay, got it.
I know that Richard Patterson was joking about doing that.
There's a sommelier out there who actually does, though. It's something interesting like that, as they well should in some cases. But in any case, moving on.
This is, I can best liken this to a good Highland, just on the cusp of space side single malt in terms of flavors. It is a little bit fruity, with a little bit of caramel and vanilla, and a touch of like sort of mulling spices, and just a little bit of that like sort of cereal grain flavor, like the flake cereal.
We avoiding naming cereal brands?
I mean, like when you're talking about
I
like
wanted to say bran flakes, but also it's been so long since I've had like raisin bran that I don't actually remember it that well.
Fair.
when we're talking about the flake cereal, whether they're talking about like corn flakes or bran flakes, I mean, like once you get into that, almost all of them are kind of interchangeable, really.
Yeah. I will say that I prefer the rice checks over the wheat checks, but that's a texture thing.
Oh, really?
I don't think I knew that there were wheat checks. I knew there were what's the other it has like the same squares with like a woven grain sort of thing, but it's not Chex, it's a different brand.
It's a cereal
Is it
or
Life?
Yes.
Life. You're thinking of Life. I love Life cinnamon.
Life is great. Not at all like Chex. And yeah,
yeah,
corn
not
Chex
very,
is the way
very
to go.
dissimilar. Yeah.
Also,
Big fan of Chex Mix, but
you guys
yeah.
ever make Scooby snacks?
Scooby,
No.
what are Scooby snacks involved? I've heard of them.
So Chex and like peanut butter and chocolate powder and like powdered sugar all mixed up, tossed together in a bag, and it like sort of makes these like I guess like the peanut butter kind of all binds it together, so you get these like nuggets of like great flavors and textures.
I'm happy to assure you I've never had Scooby snacks.
No.
Hey, welcome
The
in.
Fawn has made his case for cinnamon checks, and Genji prefers the Golden Grams, which I
Golden
can't say I've
grams are
ever had
excellent.
actually.
Golden grams are great, dude. They're so good.
I want to say I've gotten Golden Grams as a tasting note in a bourbon before. I can't
That
remember
makes
which one.
that makes a
Interesting.
lot of sense actually. They have a very malty characteristic to them, I feel.
Hmm.
Which is
So,
weird
what
for
are
a
you
bourbon now that
drinking,
I think about it,
Ian?
but in any case. Oh, right, what I'm drinking. So I'm drinking the Delbach Dorado mesquite smoked whiskey. As you can see, this is a. Oh wait, no, my camera's down here. This is a very low bottle. I use this for everything from drinking to cocktails to cooking and things like that. On account of the fact that I can afford to. So I mean, full disclosure, I work for this distillery. I think their stuff is very good, but I do work for them. So take everything I say with a pinch of salt right here. The mesquite smoked whiskey, a little bit unique to the Southwest. You get, if I remember correctly, we do mesquite smoked. Colkegan out of Santa Fe Spirits over in New Mexico does
Mhm.
mesquite smoked whiskey. And if memory serves, I believe that Balcones put out a mesquite smoked whiskey, but don't quote me on that one.
Balcones has, I believe, and also Ranger Creek has a mesquite smoked. That may have been a special edition, though. I could be
That
wrong.
that might have been, yeah. I could have sworn that I'd seen another one around, but I can't find it anymore anywhere. So with this kind of stuff, especially since we're out here in the Southwest, it's ungodly hot at most times of the year. This stuff is we age it for a very short period of time, quite honestly. Only in this particular case, this bottle was only aged about 12 months or so, so only about a year. It's a good portion of mesquite smoked malt inside this one right here. A little bit of, not a little bit, fair bit of unsmoked malt as well to balance it out. You get this really nice kind of woody smoke. With the Dorado especially, I get this very. There's a species of juniper that grows out in the mountains around here. Its bark smells very interesting. Nothing really like gin, as it were, but it has a very distinct smell of that. You also get some much sweeter notes than you get out of very peated whiskey. You also don't get any of the kind of interesting medicinal notes you get out of like an Islay Scotch or anything like that. A lot more campfire and things such like that going on in the Dorado. Funny thing about mesquite wood, if you over smoke this kind of thing, it turns out tasting a little bit tobacco-y, cigarette-y almost. In this particular case, it comes out a little bit
Interesting.
more pipe smoke, as it were. But earlier on, apparently, our founder Steven had some trouble with everything kind of tasting just really, really rough, as it were.
Is that just the amount
That's most of
of
what I'm drinking right there.
Is that just about the amount of smoke that you put into the malting process, or is it about the blend of smoked and unsmoked malt?
Both, pretty much. Earlier on, I believe that he was just actually over smoking the malt, if I understand correctly. But also, I believe that we are at about 60-40 smoked unsmoked in our blend. So we used to do it a little bit higher, and we got a lot of people really enjoyed it insofar as how smoky it was. A lot of people really thought it tasted way too cigarette-y, as it were. A little bit closer to cigarette ash than you would want a whiskey to be. So we kind of dialed it back a little bit, sort of pushed back into the kind of more campfire area right there.
Yeah, makes sense. Well,
So,
I'm joining you with a little bit of a pour of the Lost Lantern Desert Dessert, which is a Delbach multiple casks. Yeah,
Multiple casks.
yeah. So this is a little blend of a few barrels of Delbach, which is fairly close in profile to the Dorado, but not exactly, if I understand correctly. At least the
Going to be
smoke wise.
sweeter than the Yeah, going to be very much very very similar smoke wise. Same amount of smoke that you're going to have from the Dorado, much sweeter from the Sauternes and the Pinot de Charente cask and things like that.
Yep. This is the only Delbach. Well, I have the other Lost Lantern Delbach as well, but these are the only Delbachs that I have. I haven't gotten any original official bottlings of Delbach yet. Yet, soon. As soon as
Hopefully soon,
as soon as they
as soon as we can figure that out.
as soon as they don't explode in the back of a truck.
As soon as they don't, it's so hot out here. It's crazy.
So I don't have any Delbach, but I would
Yeah.
like to join you for some smoke. And I've got a little bit of this McCarthy's Oregon Single Malt Single Barrel number 704, a sample from a friend. So I'm just going to pour just a little tiny bit of it to preserve my...
it's that glass. That's adorable. Okay, hold on. Let me zoom in your face real quick. Here. Yeah. Fun story about this glass. This was made by a member of the Whiskey Lodge and kindly provided to Phill. It's got like a 5 milliliter capacity? Or less?
Not quite. Not quite 5 milliliters, but it is tiny. It is smaller than my thumb.
That's amazing.
But
I've never seen this glass in action. I've only seen it in pictures where it's hard to tell exactly how small it is. But that's amazing.
I didn't realize you could actually get whiskey inside that when you showed it to me earlier.
Did you use an eyedropper to get it in, or did you just freehand it?
I just freehanded it.
Nice.
That's crazy, dude.
You know what's amazing about McCarthy's?
What's that?
You can smell it even in a tiny glass.
Oh yeah, and you know, I will say I've also got to give props to Johnny for like this fantastic glass shape. Like this is spot on for a nosing glass. But it concentrates the aromas so nicely. It gives that nice oily, smoky, like very Isla-ish character, the perfect opportunity to rise to the forefront. I love McCarthy's.
I will for sure be having McCarthy's before the end of this stream. I've got the PX behind me, up over my shoulder. The orange label, you can't miss it. I'm gonna be having some of that later, but if I have that, I'm gonna lose the ability to detect nuance and smoky flavors from other whiskeys that I have here. So yeah, for the benefit of the audience, maybe let's do a few minutes talking about what's going on here. So the last 2 weeks, we've been doing a little 101 series about bourbon and Scotch. And the reason that we did those is because bourbon and Scotch collectively explain what the heck American Single Malt is, or rather give you the background to understand what the heck American Single Malt is. So basically, Scotland is known for single malt whiskey these days. And more than that, what are you chuckling about? Or are you just tickled about how small that glass is?
Oh, I'm enjoying the whiskey that's in it.
Oh yeah,
that too. Little there is.
That too, yeah. So Scotland is most famous for the single malt whiskey these days, and it turns out that a lot of the rest of the world has also decided to make whiskey that way because it is an extremely flavorful whiskey that allows for a lot of artistry in its production. And the world has a pretty easy time agreeing on what the rules are. It's going to be, for the most part, it's going to be made in a pot still. It's going to be 100% malted barley. You can age it in any kind of cask you want, as long as it's a certain minimum age, is usually 3 years. A few other things like that. And then it could be smoked or unsmoked. That's basically the deal that is single malt worldwide, the definition of single malt worldwide. Now, in American whiskey, we have this thing where everything has to be new oak. And everything has to be, there's really no minimum age unless you want credit for the age. And then you put the straight whiskey label on, and it's a minimum of 2 years. So like we're kind of in the ballpark. And so like that's kind of what bourbon explains to us, is it has to be 51% of a single grain, a single type of grain, not to be confused with the Scotch definition of single grain. And so there is such a thing as American malt whiskey. That's not what this is. because American Malt Whiskey says it has to be 51% malted barley and aged in new oak, which coincidentally, and one of the reasons that I started with this one, Westward is American Malt Whiskey. It further qualifies as American Single Malt Whiskey because it's 100% malted barley, and the fact that they use new oak doesn't stop it from being a single malt. But American Single Malt is a category that's still being legislated. It has not actually been formalized yet as a definition. And the reason that this is such a controversial thing is, first of all, we have that definition of malt whiskey, which is a little bit at odds with what the world considers to be malt whiskey, which is the Scotch single malt definition, basically. And so what they're pushing for in this regulation is to say, okay, we're not going to restrict the still type because American whiskey expects there to be no restriction on still type. We're not going to restrict, what else was it?
Age.
Age
That's right. They're not going to restrict age because,
or barrels.
yeah, or the type or size of barrels, because the rest of American whiskey doesn't do that. But what we are going to do is align with the rest of the world and say it's 100% malted barley, and that makes it a single malt. And additionally, because the tradition of single malt usually uses whatever casks are available, not just new casks, we're going to relax the restriction that is typical of American whiskey, where it's always new oak, and instead allow any type of cask as primary aging. That opens the category way up. There's a ton of room for experimentation in American single malt, and not surprisingly, it's a really big category. It doesn't even have a formal definition yet, but a whole bunch of 200 plus distilleries have gotten together and say, we want this to be the definition, and they submitted that to the government, and the government wrote it up, basically. And actually, to that point, I have this slide here, which is essentially, this is what was written up. For all
you just had it right there.
Yeah, for all of the angst around this definition, it's deceptively simple in how it was written up. They only add this one sentence at the end of paragraph B and this one line to this table to define what American single malt whiskey is. And every word and every column has been meticulously considered. And we'll get into that in more detail at a later date, because the very existence of this definition and the fact that it's been proposed is a really significant thing. And it's something that basically made me want to be a whiskey writer in the first place. And, to do what we're doing here, to talk about whiskey, because this category fires the imagination and inspires you to want to write about what people are actually doing with it, because there's so much variety available. And it's not being constrained by the long-standing traditions of American distillers, because it's a brand new category. And so you have a lot of craft distilling getting in and doing their own thing here. One of the things
and larger distilleries as well, pretty soon, it seems.
Yeah, Jack Daniel's has already gotten into it. Keschel is not a larger distillery, is it?
Oh, no. I grabbed that initially when we were talking about craft distilleries getting into it.
Yes.
They're one of my favorite craft distilleries. In terms of big names, we've got Yellowstone just released this single malt, which is, I believe, aged in new oak barrels. Yep, new charred American oak barrels.
Yeah, I have a whole write-up. Let me go to my Medium and go to the other article that I have written. This was sort of meant to be my, and this would be essentially what we presented if we were going to do an American Single Malt Whiskey 101, where I talk about bourbon and I talk about Scottish single malt and I talk about American whiskey regulations and why American Single Malt Whiskey is a big deal. That article, I'll put the link in chat, and I will also put it in the YouTube comments. This article's been around for a while because I wrote it while the public comment period for the proposed rules was open, as a way of informing people so that they could have an informed opinion. Because a lot of people, there were certain things that were written into this table that made sense within Scotch or made sense within American whiskey, but people who had opinions about what single malt should be didn't necessarily. I'll let you do that cork pop in a second.
No, I'm waiting. No worry.
So I saw a lot of what looked like misinformation, and I wanted to contextualize it all. So I wrote this up. It ended up being a few thousand words. It's, Medium says it's a 23-minute read, but I have been told that this is incredibly informative. So feel free to give that a read. We'll probably get into it in our next stream, which will be in a few weeks. Go
It
ahead,
is
Ian.
an incredibly information dense and yet approachable article.
Go for it.
All right, all right. We're opening up in a new whiskey.
Ooh.
Ooh, that was a good one. Did you all catch that?
It didn't quite come through, but
Shoot, I might need to update my settings on there next time I do one.
probably doing sound suppression on you in Discord.
Yeah.
And Phil's got it. Phil's got his settings
Yeah,
set
Phil's
right.
got it.
Yeah. I'm just gonna pour myself a little bit of the Yellowstone because I brought it up and we spoke briefly about the big names getting into the game.
So, in a broad sense, we're very excited about this. It is, in many ways, very new, in many ways, partaking of some much more traditional styles in a new space, as it were. But insofar as American whiskey, this is a lot of like really fun and experimental things going on right here.
Yeah, this is. It's not correct to say it's the Wild West because there is some guidance, but this is an area in which a distiller can go, this is something that I've never tried before, and I think it'd be really cool to, put my mark on it and see what it does. And I've already seen some people talking about, different types of wood being used to make the barrels entirely
Mm.
to see what would happen.
Gary?
And the only reason I discovered that is because I was thinking to myself, wouldn't it be cool to make a little barrel out of white oak, a little barrel out of Gary oak, a little barrel out of sugar maple, and some other things, and age the same like batch of new make in each of those separately and see what happens.
Yeah, not to mention you'll be learning how to make barrels, so that's a whole project.
Yeah, that's not so hard. You just got to get the math right. The problem is I'm not good at math.
That sounds like no problem at all.
No
Yeah.
problem.
I bet that anybody would get that right on the first try.
I've got a table saw. I can do this.
It's all about angles and miters and
Geometry.
geometry.
Straight wood.
No, bent wood,
No
Yeah.
bent wood.
right?
I mean, yeah. So typically, how casks are made is the staves are like shaped kind of like this, and so
Yeah.
they're broader in the middle than they are at either end. And the easiest way to shape them is you get one side into or one end into your outermost ring,
Ian with the prop.
and
Yeah, with the props.
yeah, of course. And then you typically either steam or use indirect heat to soften the fibers of the wood, and then you bend it forward using successive hoop sizes on the other end to get your barrel more or less shaped, and then you flip it over and put the intermediate rings on the other end. I've watched videos of people making barrels. I've never done
It's
it myself.
super cool.
I should watch some of those videos. I feel like I'd be into that. I've seen
I
like
like barrels.
I guess I've seen little bits and pieces, but not like here's how you do it beginning to end. Oh, is that one of those staves that has the cup holders on it? Like drilled into
Oh
the other
yeah,
side?
we made this at the distillery. Yeah.
Nice. I got one of those as a
Right,
gift
turn
for a
that right
friend.
side up. Yeah.
Nice. Well done.
Yeah,
I
fun
need to
one.
buy some staves.
My wife got me a guitar rack, like a
Ooh.
wall-mounted guitar holder that is made out of barrel staves.
Ooh,
That's
fun.
cool.
And that is a project that unfortunately has had to wait because I need to get a stud finder. And I don't want to put holes in the wall and then end up tearing down the drywall.
Fair
Hey,
enough.
hey, Doug.
Hey, have a nice night, Pon.
Good
Yeah,
night,
good night.
Pawn. It's great to see you. Um, so only because I feel obligated to make the joke. You should ask your wife for help on that because she clearly is an expert at finding studs.
Hey. Well, that's not where I thought this was gonna go.
Not quite.
I try to make like friendly jokes, you know.
As opposed to unfriendly jokes.
I
I
mean,
suppose those are always preferable.
yeah.
So,
All right. Let's talk a little bit more about smoke. Because
yeah, sure.
when it comes to American single malt whiskey, I kind of can't stop thinking about smoke because in Scotch, so the three of us, I mean, first of all, it goes without saying, the three of us are all American single malt fans, not exclusively, but to a great extent. I write about American single malt. Ian works at an American single malt distillery, and
I drink a lot of single malt.
Phill
And
has
Phill drinks a lot of rye.
all of those shelves behind him filled with interesting whiskeys, a lot of which are American single malt. So,
Yeah.
we're all fans of tasting American single malt around here. And you may also remember from Sunday, if you tuned in, all of us had to work hard to come up with an interesting region to talk about that wasn't Isla. And one of the reasons we love Isla so much is because smoky whiskey. And single malt whiskey takes smoke really well, as opposed to other grains don't really take smoke very well. So when you're talking about smoking whiskey, it's almost always single malt. And smoky whiskey is a very, like, once you get used to it, it's very much a comfort thing. Like, it's
Yeah, who wants
nice
to
to
see
have
me
a
destroy
nice.
my taste buds live on stream?
Let's do it.
Sounds like excellent clickbait.
What are you pouring?
Tire fire cask strength.
Oh, okay, we're doing it again. Cool. The cocktail wasn't enough.
The cocktail wasn't enough. It was too toned down.
Yeah, I'm starting with a relatively delicate smoke that's in the Delbach
Very much so, yeah. Much more
desert.
delicate in that style.
I kind of feel
Tire
bad at this
fire
point.
whiskey.
I really wish that I'd been able to review the single distillery series American Single Malts from Lost Lantern way earlier, because since I'm about to go on vacation, I'm definitely not doing it for the next 2 weeks.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, I would have liked to throw a review up before they were sold out and say that I had anything to do with them selling out, but honestly, they didn't need any help.
I don't know if they did, yeah. Gosh. Yeah, so interesting thing about this. So you can get smoke from a lot of different ways in America. There are a few things, like at Del Bach and Santa Fe Spirits and such. We get indigenous woods and we smoke them. In other things, if I remember correctly, Triple Smoke by Corsair. I don't know if that's a malt whiskey off the top of my head, but it is a smoky whiskey. I believe that they smoke their grains with peat, cherry wood, and oak. Thus the triple smoke. For the tire fire, as well as places like McCarthy's, they're going to import a certain amount of that. In the case of tire fire, if I remember correctly, they import a peated malt from Inverness, Scotland, and it is incredibly potent, as it were, in smell and flavor. Phill, you're holding up your double fisting bottles over there. You look like you got something to say.
So, because we're talking about different woods used to smoke malt in the States, this is the Copper Fox Peachwood, which is 100% peachwood smoke to malt their barley to 12 to 18 ppm, which is not a whole lot, but it is definitely present, and it is delicious and subtle and beautiful. And this is the Wasman's single malt, which is also made by Copper Fox, which they used peach, cherry, and hickory to smoke.
I didn't realize they smoked the Wassmans. That sounds wonderful.
I can't
It
believe
is
I didn't think to bring out my own Copper Fox, because this is a lovely malt.
I
Beautiful
really
stuff.
like Copper Fox. It is subtle and beautiful and fantastic.
Not to mention the color.
Oh yeah.
look at the rich, like reddish
Mahogany.
mahogany color on that. Beautiful.
You have
Mm.
a single barrel at cask strength, right?
That's correct. It's 66.75% alcohol by volume. And this one, I don't know if this is I don't know if this is unusual for Copper Fox, but they have like a whole. There's a lot going on with this bottle. If I could entertain you with the reading of a label,
Of
Oh, go
course.
for it.
I'll put that closer to the camera just for a second so you can see all those words on there. They all tell you
It's a lot of
something.
words.
This is the opposite. When we did our labels episode and we were talking about like labels that have a lot of fluff, like feel good fluff, but fluff, like not a whole lot of technical information. This is the exact opposite. Tons of words. Now they also have fluff on the back. That's true. I'm looking at the back here. They've got like a letter from Rick Wasmond. Um,
Oh, okay.
but and
Who
this is
is a
sort of the
very cool person,
story.
by the way.
I'd love to meet him. I got to come visit Virginia.
You do.
So Copper Fox pot stilled, so they're telling you what type of still they used, which is typical of a single malt. Um, Port style barrel finish, original American single malt. Whiskey distilled from 100% malt mash, finished with toasted applewood and oak, and finished again in wine barrels.
Ooh.
They even go into the types of maltings that they used. Grains used 100% in-house floor malted 2-row and or 6-row Virginia barley. Malting notes. I'm just impressed at this point. Pure applewood and cherry wood smoke, approximately 12 to 18 ppm. Light toast. Now, I don't even know what to do with that information because no other distillery provides it, so I have nothing to compare it to. Distilling notes: pot distilled to between 150 and 160 proof. Barreled with a progressive series of new and used applewood and oak chips inside used bourbon barrels and finished in port-style wine barrels from neighboring wineries. And last but not least, incredibly important, non-chill filtered.
Mm.
Yeah, everything about this bottle, like, it's one thing to say the label is telling me a beautiful story. It's another for me to say, this is a phenomenal whiskey. Like when I first opened this up and tasted it, one of my favorite American single malts at the time.
Really?
Which was, and I never did a review of it, I think, because it didn't quite make it into my advent, but I had written 25 or so, 27 reviews of American single malt whiskeys at that point, and this blew my socks off. This is just, I mean, first of all, it's 66.75% alcohol, and somehow it doesn't kill you. And just it's just because it's such a high percentage of alcohol, it's got such an intensity of flavor without being super hot that it just like blows your socks off. Like this is the best of pot still non-chill filtered whiskey, where all of that beautiful flavor and oiliness protects you from the harshness of the alcohol and just gives you a wonderful experience. Not to mention all those wine flavors really come through and the smoke, beautiful balance. I'm not going to pour this
That
now.
sounds amazing.
I'll pour it later because I know that this will kill my palate. It's just got so much going on. Like I just won't be able
Oh,
to
you
taste delicate flavors anywhere else because this is that intense. And I'm saying that knowing I'm going to pour Bacchus before this. And
really? Are you
Bacchus,
doing that tonight or?
I don't know. I've got a lot of stuff to do.
I will
Yeah, 'cause I was
say,
about to say, like, we've only got so much time, Doug.
if
Well,
we
you know,
could,
I've
like,
already got 3. Like I'm just putting stuff in glasses, taking a couple of sips, and setting it aside. Like I'm going to be sipping through this for the
Fair
rest of the
enough.
night. So like, there's a good chance that I'm not planning on finishing any glass of whiskey on stream tonight. We don't have enough time. But
I will say that the folks at Copper Fox are absolutely extremely good at what they do. And also some of the most approachable and kind people I've met in the industry. And that's saying something given that, like, I consider Joe a friend. I consider Caitlin a friend. But, like, walking up to the booth at the Virginia Spirits Expo, the second Virginia Spirits Expo I've ever been to, and Rick Wasmond recognized me. Like, that's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, great to talk to.
So
you
either
know,
he's really
cool
good with
people.
faces or you left an impression, and I would say probably both.
Maybe. But definitely really want to get him onto the podcast to talk about his whiskey because he does a fantastic job. And I think that it would be really cool to talk to him about what goes into their malting process and their distillation and everything from there on.
Yeah. If it's all the same to you guys, I think that we should focus on American single malt producers for our interviewees. I have reasons, right? For one thing,
Yeah.
Go on.
they're all super cool people and great
Yes.
craft producers, which means they've got a lot to say that isn't just the company line.
Yeah.
Our whiskey good, right? Like they really have a handle on all the decisions that they're making, and that makes it for a good conversation. Two, there's so many of them that have not gotten enough media coverage yet, in my opinion. Like even the ones that are particularly notable, in my opinion, haven't shown up in that many interviews, and that is a service I would love to provide for the world. And I'll throw in a 3. I selfishly want to talk to them because I love this
Okay.
stuff, and we should do that. We can it's a win-win-win, right? All right, I'm going to talk about the next thing that I poured in my glass here, since I talked about what I didn't
Absolutely.
pour. I'm going to make this bigger. Do you guys recognize this?
Yeah, totally.
Do you know what this is? I mean, besides what it says. So this is Copperworks. Yeah. This is Copperworks Single Malt Whiskey, American Single Malt Whiskey, number 042. This is a particularly interesting release of Copperworks. It says it's aged 63 months. And if you look real close there, on the right side of the 42, what does that say?
I'm afraid I can't read, Doug.
Oh, sorry. It says
Peanuts.
It says peated. It says peanuts.
Oh, peated.
No, Doug, you don't understand. I don't know how to read.
My camera resolution is not that good, and I'm gonna leave questions of literacy completely behind us. So this is a peated American single malt whiskey, but it's not just peated; it is American peat. That's
this stuff.
This is the first release of a whiskey that used American peat as opposed to Scottish peat. Most of the American single malt whiskey that is peated is using Scottish peat. Either they had the barley malted with peat in Scotland, or they imported peat from Scotland and did the malting here. But this is from Washington's Skagit Valley peat. And Westland and Copperworks filled casks collaborated on this with Skagit Valley Maltings, which is the malting house that they use, to develop the peat bog. And they filled casks with this whiskey at the same time. And because of the differences in Westland and Copperworks style, Copperworks reached a point where their whiskey was ready to get bottled. And even though they weren't the leads on the development of this whiskey, they give full credit to Westland. They were the ones to discover and develop the peat bog and do the first actual barrel fills. But Copperworks was the first to bottle an American peated whiskey because they aged it less time. Or they went through less iterations, something to that effect. Oh, fun thing about this bottle. I got this from Jason Parker when I went to interview him. Ahead of that interview, I said, I didn't get a chance to buy this bottle, but I really, really want to review it. Is there any chance that you still have a sample available I could take home with me? And lo and behold, he did give me this surprisingly large. I was expecting maybe a 50 milliliter sample. This is a 100 milliliter sample.
At 100 mil?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Oh, let's see.
This is one of the things that I do love about American single malt whiskey. People are not afraid to experiment, to try to kind of forge new ground in that way. Sometimes things work very well. Sometimes not as much, but people learn things all the same, and I think that's incredibly valuable in a sort of new space like this. And that's, I think, one of the reasons that I really, really enjoy trying a lot of these things so much.
I just realized that I poured myself. I got ahead of myself, and I poured one, and then I was like, oh, I'm talking about this bottle, I should pour it, and I just poured a sample of the same thing. Let's just put that in the same glass. What's nice
I have
about this
actually.
Washington State peat, you wouldn't think, right? You say peated whiskey, it's going to taste like smoky and medicinal and boggy and whatever. You're used to Scotland peat, and usually you're probably used to Islay peat, which has those qualities. But there's also Highland peat, which has kind of like more like forest and heather and sort of. This is something completely different yet again. Um, it's more like mossy and like it's sort of like mountainous woodland grassland kind of Skagit Valley, right? It's the type of vegetation that grows up here in the Pacific Northwest. So nothing particularly weird to the American palate. It sort of just smells like the outdoors. It smells like going on a camping trip and making a bonfire with what's there. It's shockingly delicate. I would have thought like, hey, we're gonna do the first American peated whiskey. We're gonna make sure that we really show off what the peat tastes like and just like get the peat parts per million way up there. A couple of reasons I think. Oh, I didn't realize I still have my face big. But that's fine. Um, a couple of reasons I think. Actually, it turns out getting a really high peat parts per million on the malt is like a whole skill that Scotland has perfected, and Skagit Valley peat is apparently still working on that. And the other thing is that they didn't want to completely blow people's palates up first thing, right? Because a lot of American whiskey drinkers just aren't used to smoke. And to like a bourbon drinker, this is going to be really smoky whiskey. To an Isla Scotch drinker, this is like, oh, that's like a pleasant background of smoke. And of course, Copperworks just makes delicious. They start from they put a lot of care into the beer. The wash is normally what they call it at like a Scottish distillery, but Copperworks thinks of it as a beer. They're actually partnering with breweries to do it. So the wash is actually made outside of the distillery, brought in, pumped into their holding tanks, and then distilled from there. Um, and just like Westward kind of does the same thing, where they really focus on the beer. They make their beer in house. That sort of beery quality does come through in the whiskey. And on top of that, Copperworks always has a way of being delightfully sweet without having there's no wine casks or anything to this. It's just a delightfully sweet whiskey. Now, before I completely give up the microphone here, I have the other American peated whiskey.
The other American peated whiskey.
Yep.
Drum roll, please.
Yes.
Drum roll, please.
Westland has finally released their Solum Edition 1.
Ooh.
And this is Westland's American peated, Skagit Valley peated whiskey. And I have not yet done this side by side, but I will say that both of these whiskeys do have a quite delicate smoke. That if you are looking for something that is smoky the way Islay whiskey is smoky, this isn't going to be it. But it is a delightful. Huh. I just realized this has not the Westland screw. I think I realized this before, but I just realized again live on stream. Unlike
Ooh, that was a good sound. I love that sound.
Most of the Westlands have a screw top. This one has a synthetic cork, which
interesting.
I actually like better. The screw tops are fine, but they're extremely tight when they have a good seal on them and really hard to unscrew. The synthetic cork is sort of the best of both worlds because it's not oxygen porous, but it has that same bottle closure effect and the pop. It feels a little bit more luxurious, ultimately. But we're not here to talk about the bottle. We're here to talk about the whiskey.
Oh, Doug, we're always here to talk about the bottle.
Yeah, sure we are. Now, I have to say that both of these whiskeys represent the distillery style fairly well. And on top of that, this light layer of American peat smoke. The Copperworks is beery and sweet. And the Westland is, it's like a little hay-like. It has that sort of like that bitterness to it still, but not like there's a barrel bitter note that I get in Westland a lot of the time, that like to me tastes like charcoal briquettes. And
Hmm.
depending on the balance of the whiskey, that can work or not work. But like if it is too strong, it's hard for me to taste anything else, and so I don't usually like it. I am pleased to say this does not have that note in excess. It's a little bit there. It's part of the Westland profile. Um, you might slightly confuse that note with smoke. I know I did. The first time I tasted Westland, it was Calais Edition 1, which is absolutely not a smoked whiskey. That was their Alba barley, single barley varietal, like super experimental, like farm to glass whole project. Expensive because of all of the extra cost of those things. Um, but delicious. It tasted like grilled pineapple. And that grilled that sort of charcoal grill flavor, I thought was coming from some sort of peat smoke. But it turns out it was actually coming from their casks because that expression was completely unpeated.
Really?
Interesting.
And with experience, I've learned to understand the Westland profile so that I don't get that confused anymore. And maybe it's just a general whiskey experience thing because back then I'd had maybe a few dozen whiskeys under my belt. But yeah, both of these phenomenal whiskeys. Westland, I was talking to Matt Hoffman, and he basically said the reason that they didn't release a Solemn earlier is because they wanted to make sure that they got the right balance of smokiness and the cask mixture that they do because they wanted to present American peat to the drinker for the first time and have them fall in love with it. They didn't want to take any chances on it being to this or to that. They wanted to create a beautifully balanced whiskey, even though it took them 7 or 8 years from the time that they first laid down peated whiskey casks. And I can say it was totally worth it. This is a great whiskey. Um, on its merits, on its flavor, it's hard to say that any whiskey is worth $183 after tax, which is what this was. It was 100. It's basically 149.99 plus all the Washington state taxes, so like 150.
Okay, I was
It
about to ask.
it
Yeah.
becomes 183 out the door. Um, it's hard to say that any whiskey is worth that, but I will say, knowing that this is like the first American peated whiskey that was laid down, I am more than happy to pay that to have this on my shelf because this is a very significant whiskey to me. And that's actually a marketing line that Westland used. When I tried that Calais first edition, they said this is a significant whiskey, right? They emphasize that it's significant, not that it's good, not that it's this or that, but significant because they're talking about we're going to be developing non-commodity single varieties of barley to produce the best flavor, even at the expense of cost. And here they're saying, I'm saying, I don't know if they've marketed it as such, but I'm saying I think this is the most significant whiskey they've made so far because the first American peat used to smoke American barley to make American single malt whiskey. I love that. Yeah, by the way, I did pay for this one. This was not a distillery sample, right? While the Westward, I just want to, point that out, right? Like I'm not overselling
Yeah,
this.
sure.
I bought this because I wanted it, because it is
Oh,
significant
sure.
to
Yeah,
me,
yeah, 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 yeah.
right? I didn't buy the Westward Pinot cask, right? And I'm gonna say that that's great because I think it's great, not because they gave me that sample, right? I retain full editorial control of my opinions. They give the whiskey. They hope for good feedback, good coverage.
For the record, I do not retain full editorial control. If you give me whiskey, I'll love it.
So
Uh,
you are
but
price
Ian,
sensitive, you would say.
Oh, I don't
I
know
I
about
would
that, but
I would say, how often are you in possession of a whiskey that you do not enjoy?
that is a great question.
If we define enjoyment as thinking that a whiskey is perfectly fine to drink, what I would say is a 5 out of 10
Yeah.
or a 75 out of
Okay.
100 because I use both of those rating scales because I'm a silly person. If it gets a C or better, I'd say I like it. I can
That's fair.
almost count on one hand the number of whiskeys that have come in lower than that. Which some would argue means my scale is imbalanced. But part of it is I don't go out of my way to find bad whiskey. Like, I'm sure there's a lot more bad whiskey out there, but like, yeah. 5 out of 10, I like to focus on the words in my rating system. 5 out of 10 is good.
Yeah.
And from there, I go very good for a 6 out of 10. 7 out of 10 is great. 8 out of 10 is excellent. 9 out of 10 is incredible. And 10 out of 10 is unforgettable. I wouldn't say perfect. Perfect is hard, but I do find that when I'm getting to the 9 out of 10 level, usually the only thing holding it back from me saying this is a 10 out of 10 is that I have nitpicks, right? Like, I wish it was more this, or I wish it was less that, but this is incredible, you know? So maybe 10 out, maybe I'm underselling. Maybe 10 out of 10 really is my concept of perfect, because I'm at the point that I'm getting to a 9 out of 10, I'm looking for reasons not to give it a 10 out of 10 rather than reasons to bump it up.
We've talked a little bit about my whiskey rating system before, insofar as that it doesn't make sense.
Is it good or not good?
No, it's not even that. So I think that this Tire Fire cask strength right now is an unforgettable whiskey. I am in an abusive relationship with this whiskey.
Yeah, I guess
I don't
unforgettable
even
could go both ways. I don't know what to call 10 out of 10.
Yeah,
Unforgettable
it's a tough
seems
one.
like it works. Perfect seems a little too on the nose. There's got to be something else.
Well, because you believe that something could get to a 10 out of 10, right?
Yeah, I'm open to that possibility, right? It's a perfect match for my palate. I love it. I would drink it no matter what. I would
Ascendant.
Yeah, Ascendant. There you go. That's a good. I might add that to my scale. Call it Ascendant. So like incredible. Let's see. Phenomenal doesn't feel like it's really a whole level better than incredible, but Ascendant.
I've felt several whiskeys that I've had were phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah, unforgettable could be unforgettably bad. But the things that I end up rating low, like I'll say like, oh, I'd rather have nothing. Like the words at that end of the scale are sort of like, this is bad, I had to spit it out, or I'd rather have nothing, or like subpar, flawed, things like that. But I think that there are certain whiskeys that are so like a lot of things I'll rate really badly because they're really boring. Like I'll give something that is really, really boring a 3 out of 10, or even a 2 out of 10. Something that is actively bad probably would be unforgettable, but I wouldn't rate it highly.
I feel as though the greatest sin in a whiskey is being bad in an uninteresting way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I drink, or I smell this Tire Fire. I drink this Tire Fire. I bought this Tire Fire, and I've continued to drink it and think about it every single time I think of whiskey. Not because I think it is one of my favorite whiskeys, but because I think that it makes me deeply uncomfortable every time I drink it in an incredibly interesting way.
There you go.
I would never rate it low, because I think that they did something incredibly interesting. The whiskey itself, it smells like you've napalmed a pumpkin patch. It smells like a really hot day at the Washington D.C. Zoo. It smells fascinating.
Oh God! Now that's a visceral memory.
It is, isn't it?
Tell you what, you're making me want to try it. If only so that I can agree with you that it's horrifying. Bad and then interesting.
That's the thing. Like, I could never rate it low because someone did something. And it created, dear God, it created something.
Okay,
and I don't really know.
Dare I bring out one of the whiskeys that I feel is bad in an interesting way? And
Please do.
Done.
I wanted to avoid reviewing this whiskey in a negative light because I did get it as a what was that you held up?
Merlarky Smokehouse.
Oh, the Merlarky. Yeah. We know that's your favorite, your love to hate kind of whiskey. I got this whiskey. I believe it's called Arcane Imperial.
Oh.
I didn't catch that. What was it?
Arcane Imperial?
Oh. I'm unfamiliar.
So I've mentioned this to you before, I think, Phil. That's probably why you remember it. Or do you have some?
Yes. I do not have any, but you have mentioned it previously.
Yeah. So I feel bad about. Excuse me.
Good owl. Love the owl.
This is a great label, actually. I
Yeah.
feel bad about rating this badly because, and this is one of those places where I feel I must have my editorial control here. I received this as a free sample, as a distillery sample. And I've avoided rating it because I can't figure this whiskey out. I want to come up with a cocktail that it works in, or I want to figure out how to appreciate it as a single malt. And also, I'm not entirely sure it is a single malt. It does have a malt bill. This is just a strange and fun label here. Did we actually talk about this in our labels episode? We may have.
I
I've
don't
never
believe
seen
so.
that.
Okay. So this is Arcane Distillery, I think, from hang on. Arcane Imperial is made by beer people who designed and built a new type of distillery in the heart of Brooklyn. Our distillation process captures intense malt flavors and aromas, delivering rich notes of caramel, dark cocoa, and warm spices in a complex and flavorful American whiskey. Normally, I don't like reading the tasting notes on a bottle, but I feel it'll help me here because I don't know how to interpret this whiskey. Yes, arcanedistilling.com. I've been told recently they may actually have closed. They may have gone out of business.
Oh,
Which could be for any reason, not because of this whiskey, right? But I did receive
yeah.
a distillery sample of this whiskey as they were releasing it. It comes with a malt bill: 50% two-row malted barley, 30% Munich malt, 14% C60 malt, which I don't actually know what that is, 6% chocolate malt. And then they also have original gravity, and they have other gravity measurements on here. So they're giving you a lot of technical information about the fermentation process.
It sounds like they use a lot of brewer's malt as opposed to distiller's malt.
Yes, this is brewery people. I think they actually have a brewery as well, perhaps.
It appears that their Arcane Imperial is actually distilled from an Imperial Stout.
Correct. Now, what
Fascinating.
wasn't clear from the marketing material is whether that was hopped or not before distilling, because what it says here on the label is simply American whiskey, which is not even a fanciful name. They didn't even apply for a fanciful name. They just went with, it's from America, it's whiskey. It fits the whiskey rules, right? They didn't call it straight anything. They didn't call it malt whiskey. They didn't call it single malt whiskey. But it is single malt adjacent. I think that's fair to say. I'm interested in this as a
Yes.
single malt adjacent whiskey because, except for the fact that this was distilled from a beer which was probably hopped, although that's not clear from the marketing material or the website.
I will be clear. Their other whiskeys that they have made are explicitly listed as American whiskey with hops.
Yes, and that's why I was confused by this label. Because the
Yeah.
fact that they left that off makes me think that maybe this wasn't hopped. It was just an Imperial Stout style thing, which they then distilled. And this could be an American single malt, if they wanted to call it that. Or maybe they weren't sure, and the label that they applied for just didn't have a fanciful name, and they went for the lowest common denominator, and that's fine. But in any case, the fact that this is made from 100% malted barley makes it American single malt adjacent in my book, and therefore worth talking about in this context. Now, all that said, I didn't like it very much. I couldn't figure it out. I think it wasn't that it was bad. It was almost like the first time I had Ardbeg, I took a sip and I said, "Oh, I don't like that." And I walked away and went and had a shower and came back. Like in the shower, I was like, "Actually, that's like lingering with me, and it's like it's good. I want more of that. I want to experience this weird thing until I get used to it." This was almost that, except that it didn't quite necessarily entice me to come back to it over and over again. So what I seem to recall is I was building IKEA furniture the night that I opened this bottle. And so I think that colored my impression of it, that I felt like it smelled or tasted like particle board and wood glue.
Frustration.
Perhaps.
Yeah, and frustration. Yes. So yeah, in the spirit of honesty, let's just see. Let's see what I think of it now, because I mean, you'll see. I didn't spend much attention on this bottle. I think I had it 2 or 3 times, and then kind of never came back to it. So this is going to be the first time in a while. So it smells kind of fruity, which is like 80% like a normal fresh fruit kind of way, and like 20% kind of artificial. It does
Artificial in what way specifically?
like artificial fruit flavors, like
No,
candy
I
fruit.
mean like yeah, I was like thinking of a candy. Like I mean, we talking like strawberry Laffy Taffy or something like that.
Um, I would say let's say it's like off-brand bubblegum.
Ooh,
Hmm.
okay, okay.
It has a little bit of a sawdust flavor to it, like particle board.
Big League Chew.
Yeah. Big League Chew's not off-brand. Come on, man, that stuff's great.
Oh, fair enough.
At least I,
Little
I
League
have
Chew.
memories of the baseball team, so you know.
I always thought it was a fairly good bubble gum, honestly. I always figured that any bubble gum that wasn't bubble yum was kind of off brand.
So that first impression I have like stays with me. I feel like it doesn't quite fit, but the fact that I was thinking like particle board and wood glue, like it's hard to like let that go, even though it doesn't quite fit. So what does it say? So
Mm.
so the tasting notes on the label, rich notes of caramel. Okay, let's see if I get caramel. By the way, this is a way to taste things sometimes. You can't figure something out, just like go with the suggested notes and see if you can see what they're talking about.
Yeah. Always a reasonable thing.
Okay, so I'm thinking about caramel, and I don't get that in the glass, but that thought of caramel somehow made black pepper pop out of the glass.
Black pepper, that's fascinating. So can you tell
Oh,
me if you get any
it's
coffee out of that little guy?
it's 41.5% alcohol. It does taste a little thin, but to be fair, I've been drinking stuff that's cask strength 50%. So like
Sure.
it's on the thin side, sure. So I'm not going to fault it too much for that. Do I
It
get
doesn't say
coffee?
whether or not it's chill filtered or not, so I assume that it is, but I'm not sure.
At this proof level, probably.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, do you get coffee out of this one?
yeah, I could believe that. It's like a dark roast coffee. Like
Dark
a
roast.
little on the acrid side, like it has that sort of like really dark roastiness, like almost charred kind of quality to the nose.
So we're talking like mass produced kind of Costco dark roast kind of thing we're talking?
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, but actually that's thank you. That's a note I didn't get before, and it's totally there. That dark roast coffee is in this for sure. Um, would I say dark cocoa? Um,
Like 70% or like baking cocoa.
Says dark cocoa, so I'm assuming baking. If we're going, well, if we're going with, because I'm going to be real with you, what it seems like on their website that they have modeled this after is essentially the tasting notes of an imperial stout, caramel, dark cocoa, coffee, spice. These are what you'd get from a classical like Russian imperial stout or something like that.
yep.
So I'm interested insofar as that they've made a whiskey out of this imperial stout, but they don't necessarily seem to have changed the tasting notes around for what a whiskey is going to be.
You'd think if they do a good job of distilling a beer, those beery notes should theoretically come through.
Sure, that's fair. That's definitely fair.
There was I don't remember which podcast it was on, but there was it might have been Single Cask Nation or One Nation Under Whiskey, those guys. Where they talked to a malter who talked about how like when it comes to developing flavors in a beer, in a malt, uh, it's hard to get flavor without color.
Yeah.
And it's hard not to get flavor with an extra colorful malt or an extra colorful roast of the malt, something like that. So these dark beers, the reason they're so flavorful is because they've done all this flavor development. And interestingly, in a lot of cases, those flavors that are developed do make it through the still and into the whiskey in some sense. One thing I found really interesting when I visited Westward, they they have their beer that they make on site that they'll let you taste, and they have the new make they'll let you taste, and then of course they have the whiskey in the bottles. Every one of the bottled whiskeys they use new charred oak. It's a number 3 char, so it's not as intense as the number 4, and I think that's sort of where their chocolatey notes come from. Uh, the new make barely resembled the finished product to me, which I felt was really interesting. Right, it came out kind of estery, fruity, like that sort of bright. If you've never had new make, it's sort of hard to know what that is. But like, imagine like vodka, but vodka made out of grain, and that it hasn't been completely distilled out yet. So like, it had that bright new makey quality, and it had like a lot of esters and stuff. It was good. It didn't resemble the whiskey at all, even though they've only spent 3 years. Most of their whiskey is aged for like 3 years. Um, so I find it interesting that like the barrel sort of seems to bring the beery flavors back, right? Like the whiskey tastes like the beer, but the new make doesn't taste like the beer. So like you distill out whatever. Um, I need to visit more distilleries. I actually haven't tasted a whole lot of new makes. I wanna taste more new makes and get a better idea of how that goes. Um, because I think it's going to vary distillery to distillery. Some of the new makes probably have like a lot of refined flavor character. I want to say Copperworks new make. Come to speak of it, I actually have some Copperworks new make over here.
Ooh, exciting.
And since I poured more
Really?
Copperworks, let's see how it goes. I'm gonna use the Ardbeg glass because why not? So I'm working on my memory of the Westward new make, which was mostly like, this is really surprising that like the whiskey tastes like this and the beer tastes like this, and the new make kind of feels like a different thing somehow.
Yeah. Well,
Oh yeah,
so
Copperworks
in
new make
my
is super fruity, like esters, bananas, like strawberry jam, maybe. Like I can certainly see where the fruity and sweet character of a typical Copperworks comes from, just from smelling the new make. That said, what the wood adds in terms of caramel and sort of chocolatey notes and that sort of like the deeper body notes of a whiskey that sort of and also shaves off that top volatile end of things. Like that's all doing great things. Oh man, this is I think I might have even said this to Jason. This reminds me of an estery rum, their new make.
ah,
Yeah, I use our new make at Del Bach as a replacement for a very funky rum, quite often in cocktails actually.
Oh man, that's so good. I shouldn't have very much of that because it is still strength 135.8.
Really? That's very fun.
That'll blow out my palate if I have too many sips of that. But yeah,
S-
like so the thing about this arcane, like I don't love it as like a neat sipper. I think it's okay on the rocks, but it kind of kills it in a way, and then it's just like it loses the interesting character a little bit. Like this is this is weird and interesting. Like I've always thought that. Do I want to pick this up and drink it on a given night? Almost never. But what I want to do is figure out a cocktail spec this works for. And I don't know what I would do. I've kind of been working on that in the back burner, but not like with a lot of like I haven't come up with any good ideas, so I haven't tried anything.
Hear me out.
yeah.
Yeah. You're the cocktail guy.
Find cocktails that use Batavia Iraq. It's this
I'm gonna have to write that down.
incredibly specific, it's this incredibly specific Fijian rum that is partially distilled only about I think 5% from red rice. It's very very funky, much more funky than pretty much any other rum that you're gonna come across on your everyday sort of search for it.
You say
But
rum?
Batavia Rock Punch, yeah, rum. Technically, it's a rum, mostly distilled from sugarcane. A little bit of red rice in the mash bill though, if you call it a mash bill for rum. I'm not actually sure.
I believe you
Yeah,
would
sure,
still
why
call
not?
it a mash bill
Yeah.
because
Doesn't make a
Yeah.
mash.
you are still mashing.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
The monster
Okay.
mash.
All right, cool. Well, I'll report back when I get a chance. But anyway, this isn't even technically an American single malt, at least not on the label, and we spent quite a long time talking about it. But yeah,
Yeah, it's a
this
fascinating one. You've actually made me want to try to get it if I can.
so if they did go out of business, it might be hard. I haven't actually looked that up. Somebody said that to me, and I didn't check
You
that fact.
Their website is still fully functional. You can still buy from them on their website. So it's tough to say, but
Yeah, so like at the end of the day, I wouldn't say this is bad
yeah.
or flawed necessarily, but it does sort of come in that like 4 plus to 5 out of 10 range for me. So like kind of a 70 to 75 points out of 100. It's like a C, C minus D, right? Like that's just my general perception of this. And I want to say I've been holding back like formalizing that rating because I want to give this a fair chance and something it's suited for before I decide how I really feel about it. But this for me is not a neat sipper.
Sure.
This needs to have some other function in my bar. Um, and
And
I
to
would
be
say
completely fair, that is one of the things they suggest you use it for on their website, it appears.
this
So,
particular cocktail that you mentioned,
yeah, it says the Imperial is perfect in your favorite whiskey cocktails. Or enjoyed neat, but everything says that.
right?
But interestingly enough, the only cocktail they have for it on their website is in an old fashioned.
Hmm,
So take that all as you will.
okay. Yeah, I would say there is a little bit of a cocoa nibs quality to this. I wouldn't say it's like my preferred style of dark chocolate if we're saying it tastes like dark cocoa. But like I
Hmm.
could see cocoa nibs. Like there's a hint of fruit coming back to that sort of artificial fruit again. And yeah, like cocoa nibs. Like I could see that fits. And yes, it is for sure. There's spices. There's cloves and like that sort of direction of spices. I would say mostly cloves in this.
Mm.
I wouldn't necessarily say cinnamon. That doesn't quite fit, but yeah, cloves. Um, yeah, this is certainly an interesting one. I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, right? Like this is one of those things where that per the prompt, the whole reason I pulled this out, like this is I hesitate to say bad. I don't think it's bad. I think I misunderstand it,
Right.
right? But it sticks with me for being interesting above all.
I believe it is the literal translation of a Chinese phrase. When in Chinese you don't really like a food or something like that. I believe the literal thing that you say is something along the lines of "I don't know how to eat this" or something to that effect. And I think that's a very good way of looking at whiskeys that we don't necessarily like, especially.
There is a phrase usually like roughly translates to tastes bad, but it's like hard to eat.
Ah, okay.
And I don't know
I'm
if
afraid
that's
that my Chinese
yeah, I
is
don't know if that's the phrase you're
tragically
referring
lacking.
to because
It might not even be Chinese. This might be a fake memory that I've made up.
I mean,
I do that
I
often.
have one semester of formal Chinese learning under my belt. There's a lot of idioms I don't know.
I have no modern languages under my belt except for English. I'm afraid it's very tragic. But
Hold
yeah,
on, modern. Are we
I
sure
know
Ian isn't
ancient
a
Greek and
vampire?
Latin.
All right, I'm gonna finish up this glass because I only poured a tiny bit of it and free up
Indeed.
this glass for something else.
All right.
So as well, I'm going to be honest. We're coming up on an hour and 30 minutes here. Would you like to offer some closing statements to American Single Malt Whiskey? Anyone?
Uh, go buy single malts produced by local distillers such as Cashel, Copper Fox, McCarthy's, Virginia Distillery Company.
Specifically, only local distilleries in Virginia, as it were.
That's right.
McCarthy's isn't in Virginia.
Oh no, you're right. You did say McCarthy's. My bad.
Yeah, McCarthy's is
This
good.
just happened
Oh,
to be local to me.
speaking of
And
McCarthy's, so before I go into my closing, sorry, I'm cutting you off a little bit, but before I go into my closing
yes.
remarks, Joe sent me a text and said, of his new distillery,
Oh,
Doug,
very
they have
exciting.
some whiskeys here that would blow your mind.
Field
Ooh,
trip.
Field trip. I'm
field
telling
trip.
you,
Field
I'm
trip.
gonna get myself out there. So it's it's kind of near
I can
Carson,
drive there.
which is like kind of near Reno, nowhere near Las Vegas. I looked it up.
Yeah.
It's like it is pretty close to South Lake Tahoe though. Which
Oh,
like that sounds like kind of an interesting trip. Like do a South Lake Tahoe and then drive over into Carson and go visit the distillery. I don't actually know what to do in South Lake Tahoe, but like I hear that's a place to go.
There's a lot of hiking. There's a lot of really fun stuff.
yeah.
Sounds great.
I would literally just go to visit Joe and his new distillery.
Yeah, I would say I've sort of put off making a list of the best American single malt distilleries. Um, I probably should have. Like I've been remiss not to give my opinion on this front, but I haven't had enough to at some point I hadn't had enough to list anything other than what I'd had. Um, but I'll go ahead and do it now. Um, Westland, Westward, Del Bach, Copperworks, McCarthy's, um, Virginia Distillery Company. How can I forget? Balcones, Copper Fox.
Balcones, yeah.
Oh yeah, go check out my so if you go to DemiTastes.com, there is a link to my American Single Malt Advent, which is 27 reviews of American single malt whiskeys from 8-ish, 8-10 distilleries. There were a lot of there's a lot of similar distilleries, or a lot multiple expressions from the same distillery. Um, a lot of which were like, hey, they're close to me, so they're easy to get. Friends and so on. Oh, I could name some others, but like I think it's enough to say like I think those are. I can't say the best. Some of the best. I wouldn't rule out any of the other ones that I've tried either, but I think Balcones. If you bring up that, you know what, I might as well. I'm gonna go find the page, and I've got a nice grid actually. Yep, the advent calendar results. And this is a Reddit post. Let's see how it shows up. Oh, we've got it's dark mode. I don't know if you can see that. Let me zoom in. And sorry, Ian, your face is going away just based on the scenes that I have available.
No worries at all. I've never been particularly attached to it myself.
And I'm gonna.
That's concerning sounding.
Gonna zoom in a bit. So let's see. What did I give a 5-star value? Yes, Balcones Grand Cru, which I think was a collaboration with a brewery with like a cask exchange back and forth. For $60, I rated it the highest I've rated any whiskey, period. 95.
Wow.
So, you know, and like that's an outlier for sure, but
Really
like
only $60?
if you look at the Balcones that I have on here, right, like there was a dud. This I don't remember which expression this was, but it was like not great for the value.
Oh,
Oh
the
yeah,
Longhorn Liquor Select.
This one was a super dud. This Longhorn Liquor Select single cask just tasted off to me. And so like because I rated it so badly and it was on the pricier side, I gave it a 0 value. But yeah, like don't let this deceive you. This set of Balcones, right? Like I almost picked the low and the high, but I would say most like I own 10 bottles of Balcones and they're all amazing. Like they're all like 3 out of 5, 4 out of 5 value, like very much worth what you're paying for. And like as a group, like if you there is a certain flavor profile that is Texas aging produces this like very fruity stone fruits, dense flavor profile, lots of wood without being overpowering, at least in the case of Balcones, because they use a lot of refill casks, especially in their single malt and their rum. They once if you can get past that sort of I say get past, if you can learn to love the Texas aging style, like the results of Texas aging, which can be kind of intense. Mostly it's an intensity thing. If you can get past the intensity, they are beautiful whiskeys. I highly recommend adding a bit of water, sometimes more than you would think. A lot of their whiskeys, even their basic single malt, they bottle at 53% ABV. Like a lot of their stuff is really up there on proof. It helps to cut that down with some water, and they become beautiful whiskeys, almost all of them.
Also, if you can find Balcones lineage, that is a really great entry single malt. It's affordable. It's
Great stuff.
47%. It is a surprisingly friendly, agreeable dram. Um, and like I said, it's not terribly expensive. Like looking at American Single Malt at the moment, a lot of them are pretty expensive because it is so new, and a lot of the people producing them are really small guys, like the folks at Clear Creek making McCarthy's, Copper Fox, Cashel, even Virginia Distillery Company, which is one of the larger single malt producers on the East Coast, still pretty small in the grand scheme of things.
Guys, before we sign off, I did make note that I had a Blue Run whiskey I haven't opened. I've never tasted Blue Run before.
Oh,
How do you feel about getting into that for about 5 minutes?
sounds good to me.
Blue Run. I'm not aware of it.
I've poured myself
Wait,
some
weren't you the one that
McCarthy's.
mentioned Blue Run, and that's the reason I went to get it from my cabinet?
Not me, Ian.
Yeah, that's what
Did
I
I
meant.
mention Blue Run?
Thought so.
I must have.
Right. So yeah, here's
Okay, no, wait, I know Blue Run. Never
here's
mind,
Blue
my
Run.
bad.
This is another
Forgot it for a
Oregon
second.
single malt whiskey, and we like Oregon whiskey around here. Orange
There's a
label.
bull
Check
run
it.
near me.
Yeah. So let's open this
Bull
up.
Run. That was what you said. I thought you said Blue Run, and I was like, that's a Kentucky whiskey I've never had before.
I think I did say Blue Run. Yes, I mean Bull Run. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Bull Run. I really like Bull Run.
Nice. That's a nice cork. It's a synthetic cork. But it's nice.
I do like the synthetic.
How does one say this is a nice looking synthetic cork? It's, This is
I don't
a
know.
this is an almost like standard they call it like aspect shaped bottle. It has like a nice punt on the bottom actually. It's like this indent that's sort of a spherical. Yeah, let's see how it is. Oh, it smells really winey.
Ooh, interesting.
All right, what we got going on here? Bull Run Oregon single malt whiskey aged 6 years. Batch 7, 45.18% alcohol. And this is in Portland, Oregon. I should go visit them. I'm going to Portland soon. Pot distilled with 100% malted barley from the Klamath Basin and water from the Bull Run watershed, then aged in American oak. The spirit in this bottle contributes to the long tradition of whiskey making in America while embracing the pioneer spirit of Oregon. BlueRunDistillery.com. I poured more than I thought I would. It happens when you open up a fresh bottle.
Ah, fair.
Oh, it smells like stewed like freshly picked cherries, but like stewed down in a wine reduction with um I don't know, pear and cloves and like red wine. Like this smells like poached fruits, but like a medley. Like red fruits and berries and a little bit of pear in there. It's super fruity. I wish they said anything about casking. The fact that this doesn't say I want to know
Because they
more.
usually say about casking on their actual bottle and such, yeah.
Homemade cordial cherries. It tastes like fresh fruit and chocolate
Ooh, okay.
and a nice robust coffee flavor, like dark roast coffee made really well.
All
You know what I
right.
mean?
Yeah.
Like French press. Oh, that's really good. I'm not going to give it a rating on a first impression, but that's really good. I might even say great. Not to over index on the terms, but like this wows me from the nose through. It has that sort of common thread of American single malt whiskey that's made from really good beer, has this beery texture to it, like where it tastes almost
Yeah.
the way that beer has this sort of light carbonation to it. It has that same mouthfeel to it, and it also has the same beery, yeasty taste to it. And I like that. I really like that. One of the things that I think sets American single malt clearly apart from Scotch single malt. Like this distinction between the categories. Uh, I don't think I've ever encountered a Scotch that has this um, beery quality to it. But I really do like it. I think I come from a background of being into craft beer, so I think that's one reason why this appeals to me. I think for for an American craft beer enjoyer, um, this actually could be a really good way into whiskey. Yeah, I'm glad you prompted me to open this up because this has been kind of sitting in the back of my closet. I ordered it along with a whole bunch of other stuff, and it's one of those things where like I have too many things open already, so I can keep waiting on that. But yeah, I'm really glad that I opened this up.
Yeah, no, if you
Nice.
do enjoy that one, something I was just looking up to see where, if I could get it around me. And it appears that they have Bull Run also makes a barrel aged aquavit, which seems
Oh,
up your alley as well.
Yeah, you know I like that. I've got a barrel aged
Yeah, I
aquavit that
do.
I like
Yeah.
using in place of bitters. Yeah, so closing thoughts on American single malt. Like I think that what we're seeing here is a new category of whiskey unencumbered by tradition with a broad category definition. And we're seeing incredibly interesting things coming out of this. So, it is a great place to explore whiskey from because they're so different from each other. And I think even American single malt whiskey is developing an identity of itself. And there's regional variations for sure, but there are also commonalities. And it is by and large really good whiskey. So I highly recommend. If you're looking for a place to start, go read those reviews I wrote. They're on the American Single Malt Whiskey subreddit, American SMW, which I created. Um, it's been a little quiet lately. I think there's not a lot of buzz around American Single Malt Whiskey at the moment. Uh, I think we'll see a lot more buzz when TTB does approve the definition. Um,
yes.
and yeah, feel free to, if you write your reviews yourself, go and contribute. That's always fun. I love reading other people's reviews. Oh, speaking of, um, might as well do our usual self promotion stuff before we sign off. So subscribe to the YouTube, follow the Twitch stream, um, check out maltrunners.com, which is the review collective website that I have joined. We have just done a collective review of an Aaron 25-year-old distilled in 1995,
Ooh.
which is the first year of operation of Aaron. Um,
Ooh.
Collectively, this didn't score as high as our last collective review. Let's see.
Interesting.
Where did the average score show up? Yeah, the group. Okay, so we've got like a group analysis. So the average score, we collectively rated it between 78 and 88 points, and it averaged at 83.8. Mine was actually the lowest score. For me, the nose and the palate and the finish were kind of disjointed and made some weird turns, and there were some off notes there. The nose was completely beautiful. This is a really fun set of reviews to read because we did get some common notes, and we did this without consulting each other. We did get some common notes, but a lot of our reviews are quite different from one another. So we're getting really different interpretations out of this 25-year-old whiskey, which is very interesting because normally you take a group of people who have like a shared vocabulary for reviews, and give them the same whiskey, and you're gonna get like thematically, like you can tell everyone was tasting the same whiskey. Like people are gonna pick different tasting notes, but like usually you can tell we're all kind of in the same ballpark. We're gonna agree that Glenfiddich, or sorry, we're gonna agree that Glenlivet has like a fruitiness and like maybe Glenfiddich has like apple chips to it or something like that. Like we'll generally agree in a flavor direction. It's odd to choose a whiskey where everybody's got a different opinion, and that's fun to read because and it's fun for us to read too, seeing so many different opinions where we didn't consult with other people. uh yeah, check out this website, maltrunners.com. This is where mostly single malt, which is in my wheelhouse, including American single malt, but also rum and other sorts of stuff, uh really good group of reviewers that are writing reviews here. So we basically curated the people because these people have good taste and write good reviews. And I'm not contributing a whole lot personally. Phill is doing me the favor of posting some links in the chat. You all should check out the Whiskey Lodge. We've posted an invite there for you in the chat. And also, if you are so inclined to buy us a cup of coffee, Phill and I have a Ko-Fi link, or coffee, however you want to pronounce that. Ko-Fi, coffee, ko-fi.com. Basically, you can hand us $5 and say, thanks for the job that we're doing. Also, go and check out the YouTube. We've got all of our old streams there, and some of the edited videos are coming out of there. What else to say? We appreciate you following us. We appreciate you keeping up with us and going along with this journey. Any other closing thoughts, gentlemen?
Not from me, I'd say.
Buy craft single malts.
Indeed.
Absolutely. They are the best ones.
Yeah.
Even the bigger craft single malts. Like Balcones at this point. Yeah. Balcones was bought by Diageo, if I'm not mistaken, in the last year. A few months ago.
Yeah. Constellation, wasn't it?
Was it?
In any case.
Yeah.
They've been bought up by one of the big dogs.
Yeah.
But they still make fantastic stuff.
Yeah. And nobody changes that quickly either.
No. I mean,
No, it was Diageo, yeah.
I will constantly promote craft distilling, whether it's like local to me or local to you. Go support your local distillers. They're good people. They're making interesting products, and they're generally excited to talk about it to anyone who will ask.
That's the best kind. You walk in there and care, and they will give you all the information you want. With passion. And probably lots of tastes of stuff too.
Yeah.
Here's a tip. If you show a genuine interest in something that a craftsperson is creating, they're probably going to give you free tastes of whatever it is because they want to talk about it and they want you to have it in your hand. I thought that coffee roastery I go to, the local one, a couple weeks ago, I was in there and I was, I ordered something and I was interested in buying a bag of something. And they're like, hey, I'll just, here's a double shot for free. Like, let's talk about it and let me know what you think and everything. I actually insisted on paying for it, but like the fact that, even at a relatively large scale coffee roaster, they're saying like, I just want to talk to you about this stuff. Like, here, have it for free so we can have a conversation. Yeah. Kind of doesn't matter who you are. Just walk in there, really care about the stuff, and they'll treat you well. All right. Well, if we have nothing else to say, I think it's time to sign off.
Yes.
I'd say so.
I have glass in hand. I'm going to end this stream on that bull run. Sadly, I didn't get into my very peaty stuff, but there's always our next American Single Malt stream where we're going to do a more prepared presentation, perhaps.
My PX cask McCarthy in the glass.
Excellent. I'm jealous.
I have the tiniest bit of tire fire left.
Hanging on to it.
Hanging on to it.
All right. It's been a pleasure speaking to you as always, gentlemen, and to our audience. Until 3 weeks from now. We'll see you in the lodge.
Yeah, we'll be a little bit.
Slancha.
Slancha.
Slancha.